something happening here. What it is ain't exactly clear. There's a man with a gun over there, telling me I got to beware. I think it's time we stop, children.
Hi, and welcome to episode 35 of Occupy TV. My name's Joe Tyndall. I'm here with Reid Kimball, and we're going to be talking about foreclosures today. So welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
And okay, so let's get started. Occupy's been pretty active in trying to block some of the local foreclosures, and so tell me about that.
Right. Well, we have a committee set up, and we try to get the word out. And basically, people will come to our committee talking about their foreclosure, and they'll get a letter from the bank, Bank of America, Wells Fargo, whoever. And it may say notice of intent to sell, and there's a date. They may be given a date for an auction, and they'll come to us and basically say, I've been trying to get, very common, they'll say, I've been trying to get a loan modification, and the bank won't work with me, and so now they want to sell the home. Can you help? And we've got a variety of ways that we can help people. So one of the ways is to postpone the auction.
Okay, and so yeah, if somebody did want to get in touch with you, how would they do that?
Yeah, they can do that several ways. We have an email address that people can email if they just have a few questions. That is oebankbusters@gmail.com. So the name came from the film Ghostbusters, so we're the Bankbusters, so it's Occupy Eugene, oebankbusters@gmail. And that's one way. And then the other way is to come to our meetings on Wednesday nights from 5 to 7 p.m. And we realize that people work, so people can come in anytime during 5 to 7 and talk with us. And that's the meeting that we have to go over different situations. Typically, it's been people that have homes, but we are looking to help people that may not have homes but need them.
Actually, two people that I know, two friends of mine recently got eviction notices, or not eviction, foreclosure notices.
Okay.
So I guess we have to send them. So the meeting is where? Is it at Occupy 5 or is it at Growers?
It's at Growers.
It's at Growers. That's good because that's not moving, because Occupy 5 is going to go away now that it's spring, summertime, and the rain is stopping. So that building is going to be renovated, and we're losing it.
Right.
But so yeah, how you've worked on a couple of these and gotten them actually delayed. So.
Right, yeah. We have somebody in our group that has this tactic where they'll have a letter, and basically the letter is a template that anybody can come in and get filled out. And it says that there's a trust that has the money to pay off the mortgage in full, and everybody has the right to pay off their loans, their mortgage. Could be a car loan, could be a house. If you say that you want to pay it off, nobody should be able to stop you from doing that. Apparently, it's illegal to stop you from doing that. So they'll fill out this letter, and they'll send it registered mail to the banks, and if there's any lawyers involved, they'll send it to them, and basically that notifies the bank that, hey, we're prepared to actually pay this off now. And hopefully that will... unfortunately, the banks really don't communicate a whole lot, so you have to go to their foreclosure websites and see if the date of your foreclosure has actually been postponed. And if that doesn't happen, then you go to the auction, and we'll give the auctioneer this piece of paper, and he'll call up his boss right then on the spot and talk to them. And then that way you can postpone the sale, I should say, rather than the foreclosure. It's already in the foreclosure process at this point, but it will postpone the sale. So postponing it just, doesn't stop it, but it gives us time to do more research to find fraud. That can often be the case that there is fraud. That can help build a case. Gives us time to get the homeowner set up with a lawyer who could then perhaps file a lawsuit, if that's possible.
So the word fraud, let's talk about where that comes up.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, the word fraud usually comes up because I think in the middle of the 90s, banks set up something called MERS, which stands for Mortgage Electronic Registration Systems. and it's a computer database system used to help banks track the sale of these mortgages on the stock market. And what it also did was it eliminated the need for banks to go through the county courthouses. You know, every city has a county courthouse where they can...
Eliminated the need? Huh? Or was this a way that they just said, we're not going to pay this money anymore? Okay.
Right. I mean, they eliminated it because they didn't want to...
They didn't want to pay the fees.
Yeah.
So now that we had this system in place for hundreds of years that keeps track of who owns what,
right.
Okay, deeds and maps and all that other good stuff, and the banks just said, we don't want to deal with that anymore because we don't want to pay the fees.
Right, exactly. And just want to make clear that people understand these fees from the county courthouses average between $42 to $48.
Yeah.
And MERS, they're paying themselves, and those fees are $5 or something like that. It's ridiculously cheap. Mm-hmm. And you know, one stat is that since I think between 2004 and 2009, Lane County is missing between those years $4.3 million in these county fees.
Yeah. So in other words, we've got this campaign going on with the county commissioners, okay, and you know it's like it's being pointed. Oh, it's the progressive, it's the liberals that spent us into debt, and the county's in trouble, and all the rest. But if the banks had actually paid the fees that they are required to pay for registration, the county would be $4.3 million richer.
Yeah, and
Yeah. Oh, wow, that's like really amazing, isn't it?
And that's just for the stat between the years 2004 and 2009.
Yeah.
You know, it hasn't been updated, so it's, you know, going to be more.
Yeah.
You know, somebody else was throwing out from...
So in other words, $4.3 million plus made it into somebody's pocket, okay? Whose pocket did it make it into?
The banks.
The bank's pocket, and the owners of the banks, and the managers of the banks, you know, more big bonuses because we found a way not to pay some money so we can up our salaries and we can, you know, have a big bonus. Oh, the 1% taking care of themselves at the expense of everyone else. Is that a new trend? Is this the first time we've ever seen this?
No, it's been happening for quite some time.
Yeah.
Quite some time.
Can we get the sarcasm to drip any harder off the walls? I mean, this crap has been going on for not just decades, but centuries.
Yeah. I mean, this is like kind of like the 1920s all over again. Maybe not as bad. I mean, I don't know. I don't know my history all that well, but you know, it's getting really, really similar. The income disparity is just insane. It's hard to imagine, really.
Yeah. I mean, you know, this is something that I've brought up a number of times on the show, but been tracking how much it takes to get on the Forbes 400 list. Okay, and in 1982, which is the first year that they did that, it took $91 million to get to be person number 400, the last guy on the list. You know, the loser. Okay,
it's got to be worse even now.
It's $1.05 billion gets you on that list. Okay? And the other thing is people say, oh, well, you know, the problem with the Forbes list is it doesn't track all the money. I mean, there's more money out there, which of course makes my argument even stronger. Because if it actually, you know, the real amount is not $1.05 billion, but we have to count all the stuff in numbered bank accounts in the Cayman Islands and all that stuff. You know, maybe it's $2 billion. But what's happened is that a very small group of people now holds a staggering amount of wealth. That 400 people holds more wealth than the bottom 3/4 of our population, which is 230 million people. 400 people, more wealth. And one of the ways they did it was not paying recording fees for deeds and the like. So we have the counties are going broke. I mean, there's plenty of money out there. Okay? But it's not in the pockets of the working people. It's in the pockets of the rich people, which is exactly what caused the Great Depression. Okay? So.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, the wealth it just doesn't make any sense to me at all. I mean, I live a frugal life. I know what my needs are, and there's just a certain amount of money where it's like, okay, I've got enough.
Yeah. So you don't understand the whole greed thing.
No, I really don't.
Lust for power, lust for greed, you know, bigger, better, faster.
I really don't. I mean, I learned, years ago that having more things just doesn't make me happier.
Oh.
Because I got to worry about how to take care of them and clean them and where they are. And so, I learned that. I learned that, definitely.
But see, if you had a lot of money, you could hire somebody to worry about that.
But then you got to manage all those people, right?
I suppose. It's just one problem for another, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
But back to foreclosures and people losing their houses and all the rest. We did dig up a couple of articles. Actually, Jamil sent them to us, and they're pretty interesting. I mean, this one right here is from Bloomberg, and it's the title says house prices seen dropping 10% in U.S. on foreclosures. Okay, so housing prices are going to go down, and why is that? Okay, and it says because people don't have. Here it is. Why? They lack money. That's why they're in foreclosure. So. It's like the complaint is, the maintenance is not getting done. It's going to hurt the value of the house. So in other words, this asset that they have that they're taking back from the people after they've canceled out your equity in it and all the rest, they're taking it back and they're worried that it's not going to be worth anything and they're going to have to sell it at a loss. And so why are they going to have to do that? Because they lack money. What does that mean? It means working people don't have any money. Why? Because the uber rich have been sucking it out of the economy.
Yeah, and the number one factor that people go into foreclosures are their healthcare costs. And we have a horrible healthcare system. I mean, I can complain and rant about the foreclosure issue, but actually the healthcare issue is something that, from a personal level, I'm not affected by the foreclosure crisis on a personal level. I rent, although it can affect renters for sure, but I'm lucky and that hasn't affected me yet. But the healthcare, that definitely affects me on a personal level, and our healthcare system is the most expensive, and I would say unless you have an emergency and you're going to die, it's the least effective.
Well, and even, that gets you back. Let's talk about it. We'll just take a little diversion down that path for a bit. In the year 2000, the World Health Organization ranked the performance of health systems by nation, and the United States came out a dismal 37th. In terms of overall performance of our healthcare system. Right. Okay? And behind every other industrialized country, and every other industrialized country has a single payer system. Okay? Some kind of universal health care, which is either, there's three systems. There's national health care, where the doctors and nurses are paid by the government, their employees. Then there's single payer, that's like Great Britain. There's single payer like in Canada, where there's a pool of money and all the practitioners are private businesses and they get paid out of that pool of money. And then there's what's called the Bismarck model, which is like Germany, West Germany, where they have a very heavily regulated insurance industry that is allowed to make about a 5% profit for administering the whole system. Okay, and the country regulates the price of insurance, and it's set at a level that they can make 5%, and that's it. Okay? So all of those countries have better health outcomes. In other words, they come in the list higher than we do, and yet they pay less, not by a little, but by an enormous amount. And so we run into that, and you talked about, you briefly brought up denial of service. Okay? When I first started talking to people publicly about single-payer systems, roughly 19,000 people a year would die from denial of service. Okay? That made it about the 10th leading cause of death in the United States. By 2007, it had risen to 30,000 people a year, making it the 7th leading cause of death, just edging out firearms, people shooting each other.
Wow.
Okay, at 29,000. And this year, okay, so that was the 7th in 2000. This year, more than 100,000 people will die as a result of denial of service. Okay, that makes it the 3rd leading cause of death. The first one being cigarettes, which takes 450,000 people a year. The second one, okay, is just general health, lack of exercise, poor diet, overweight, the whole thing. As I sit here with the gut. But, just the American diet. and American Exercise. And then third, okay, so that's 330,000 people.
Yeah.
And then the third leading cause of death in America is
denial of service.
Denial of service.
And it's just so that they can profit because they're getting the premium payments, and they don't want to have to spend that to care for somebody.
Yeah.
And it's what was the film? Sicko by Michael Moore. You know, it's just that was just heart-wrenching, absolutely heart-wrenching. And then somewhere on that list is going to be just the pharmaceutical drugs themselves.
Yeah.
You know, those themselves, because so many people are taking multiple pharmaceuticals. Those can cross-interact, and those can be deadly.
Yep.
And
so, you know, summarizing this, we now spend 18.6% of our GNP on healthcare. Okay, that's almost 1 out of every $5 spent in the United States goes into the healthcare industry. It is enormously profitable.
Yeah.
Okay, and it's a way to, you know, pull wealth out of the economy and put it into the pockets of rich people. So back to foreclosures.
Yeah, back to foreclosures. A way that the banks profit off of this foreclosure crisis is that, you know, it's a little like home insurance. You know, if your home catches on fire, you can't collect that payment until you fill out forms and you can document that you had a fire. Banks, they profit when they foreclose, but they need to prove that, you know, they've got the forms that they fill out. They don't profit until they evict somebody and kick somebody out of their homes. And the fact that, you know, our city right here in Eugene is a human rights city.
Yep.
And that means that Eugene subscribes to the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. And Article 25.1, as you know, includes housing as a human right.
Yep. So, but let's talk about the money that went in to pay for these mortgages originally. Okay, you go to the bank. Okay, they give you a bunch of money that you can then pay for the house. Okay, and now you owe that money to them. Question is, where did that money come from?
The government.
But what about the government? Okay, I mean, the interesting part of that particular thing is it's called fractional reserve banking. So the banks must hold a certain pile of money in reserve. And then they can make a whole bunch more money out of thin air. Okay, so what happens is the government authorizes the Fed, okay, to create some more money. Now, the Fed then starts charging us interest for the use of that money, okay? But they create it out of thin air. It's not, they haven't borrowed it from people. They've created it out of thin air, okay, in the fractional reserve banking system. So the point being, okay, that they're making interest on money created out of thin air, okay, and they are now taking your house. So, you know, we have a problem here, okay? In other words, where'd the money come from to originally pay for your house? Answer, thin air.
Where do I sign up for this?
Yeah, well, you have to be a big bank. You have to be part of the uber rich to begin playing on that game. And so one more time, at various points during our history, we have not had a central bank. Okay, we spent money into existence rather than borrowing it into existence, and it's just insane that the uber rich have been able to convince us to have this situation where we must borrow money into existence that came out of thin air.
Yeah. I mean, like you were saying earlier, you know, they're playing this game, and I think what's interesting about Occupy Wall Street, I'm a video game designer, so I try to think about these things in these terms. And as a video game designer, you have to design the rules so that they're fair for the players and that you're not cheating them and you're not purposely putting them on a path towards failure. And Occupy Wall Street started, I think, with a lot of really young people who have grown up playing games, and they understand how rules are supposed to work and how systems are supposed to work. And they understand, you know, intuitively that the system is rigged, the game is rigged, so that us, who are the masses who are playing, are set up to fail.
Okay, so in other words, that's kind of like a casino. You go to Las Vegas, the house always wins. Why? Because for every dollar you put into a slot machine, for example, it's like 96 cents comes back out, or 95 cents, and on the really, really generous ones, 97% will come out. So there's a 3% tax on putting your coins into the machine. Okay? So if you have a housing system, there's a tax, okay, built in. In other words, you put your money in and the uber rich take a piece. Okay? But that occurs everywhere in the economy.
Right,
and there's a lot of people in our society who think that that's true and right and just, and it's God's plan that this should happen. I mean, what do you think about that?
So could you state that another way?
Could I state it another way? Yeah, in other words, every okay, you know, for example, when we had the Occupy camp, people would, you know, not many, but a few, would come by, they'd lay into their horn, and, you know, and just keep going, and then they'd shout out, "Get a job, you dirty hippies."
Right.
Okay? So, if you get a job, okay, what happens is for every hour that you work, I mean, jobs are good. People need to do work. Not against that. Right. But the way the system is set up is for every hour that you work, some rich person makes money. Okay? In other words, you're working, you know, and you say, well, you need to get your life in order and, you know, work for your future and save up and, you know, buy things and, you know, get a wife and, you know, or get a husband or do whatever, and you got to work, okay? Yeah. But at the same time that you're working, right, for every hour that you work, you don't get the full value of your labor. You get a fraction of the value of your labor.
Okay. Well, I think that's okay as long as, you know, what I'm putting into it goes towards the things that I want. So, you know, taxes are taken out of our paychecks, and a majority of those taxes are spent on war. I don't want that. Yeah. But if a majority of my taxes are spent towards healthcare or public roads or education, personally, I'm fine with that. You know, I'm fine with helping my community be better. Okay. So really, it's just where that money is going, I don't like at all. Okay,
so we have this war machine. And what's the war machine about? I mean, we now have, the last time I heard it was 786 bases in 132 countries. And that was a number of years ago, and we've been doing some adventure all over the place. So it's probably more, you know, it's probably a higher number of bases and a higher number of countries.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. There's this photo I saw of a graphic of Iran. Yeah. And it has the number of U.S. bases all around Iran. And the caption for the photo graphic says, "How dare Iran move their country next to our bases?"
So, I don't know. It's the sanity is not there, and yet the rhetoric that allows people to accept this. I mean, we have this thing like anybody who's having financial problems, it's their fault. Okay, in other words, if you get sick, it's your fault. Mm-hmm. Okay, you must have done something because God is punishing you because it's your fault. I mean, if we're talking foreclosures, way over half of them are due to medical problems. Mm-hmm. Okay, I don't know the exact number. Do you have a better statistic? But it's well over half.
Oh yeah. I think it was like 60 to 70.
Yeah.
Yeah, so quite a number of them. And then also there's the argument that people who signed up for subprime mortgage loans, you know, should have been reading the papers.
They should have been smarter, right?
Yeah, should have been smarter with their economics. But what they didn't realize is that a lot of the banks, I mean, plus these are bankers. They're well-educated people. So somebody who has a high school degree goes in already thinking that this person across the table from them knows more than they do. They're trusting of that person. And that person across the table is saying, yes, I'm looking at the documents. All of the numbers work out great. You don't need to do anything. Just sign right here.
Yeah.
And these people were taken advantage of. Yeah. And I just...
Well, let the buyer beware. I mean, it's their fault, right?
No, not all the time. You know, especially when we're taught as a society to trust people. You know,
trust people in authority.
Yeah. Trust authority, trust people, because they went to school for 10 friggin' years and they spent $100,000 or even more in education. Don't question them. Believe them.
And they're the more evolved human beings, because we have this social Darwinism myth that's taught to us over and over and over and over is that the rich are rich because they're more evolved than the rest of us. They're better human beings. They're more moral. They're more disciplined.
Yeah.
You know, all that stuff.
I'm really intrigued by the idea that capitalism is a form of violence.
Yeah.
And so if you buy into that, they're not civilized. They're not evolved at all.
Yeah. I mean, this entire discussion, you know, when you start to think about the whole foreclosure thing and the rate at which foreclosures are occurring and the vehemence and the unwillingness of the banks to interact with people to, you know, help them deal with this kind of stuff, even when you approach them appropriately, you know, they'll say, oh yeah, we'll help you, and then a few months later, it's like they still haven't helped you, and they are proceeding big time.
It's even worse than that. They'll say, yeah, we're going to help you, and they will stall and stall and stall. They'll say, we didn't get your paperwork. You need to send it again. Yeah. There's a woman that came to our group for our help, and she had sent fax documents 18 different times. Yep. They told her 18 different times, we don't have your documents, we need them. But not only that, not only do they try and stall it, at the same time, behind the homeowner's back, they try to foreclose and kick them out of their homes. Yep. This is what's known as dual tracking. Yep. And there's a recent bill that was just passed, 1552, that was passed to end this dual tracking. Mm-hmm. But it doesn't go into effect until 90 days, and it was just passed, so it's like July 12th or 20th is when this bill is going to go into effect. And our committee is really concerned that because of this window, banks and investors are going to try to foreclose on people just because they have this window of opportunity to do that. And it's very similar with what happened with Obama's healthcare plan. When that was going to get passed, pharmaceutical companies started to jack up the prices of their medicines so they could profit in that short-term window. And it's the same thing happening in the foreclosure crisis industry.
Yeah. See, I mean, there's a question, you know, even a more basic question. Can you make a profit in a competitive market? And most Americans will get that answer wrong because they've been told year after year after year, you know, for the last few decades, repeatedly, that yes, you can make a profit in a competitive market if you're really efficient. The definition of a competitive market is one in which you cannot make a profit. Because if in a competitive market, your competitors see, oh, this guy's making a profit, they're going to look at what you're doing and say, whoa, I'm going to enter that marketplace because in my marketplace, I'm not making a profit. And I'm going to duplicate what you're doing, and you know, we will increase the supply. More supply means lower price, okay, until the profit is removed. And that's how Adam Smith's magic, invisible, guiding hand works. In other words, at the moment when there is no profit, then you can make the argument, very credibly I think, that resources are allocated efficiently in the society. But if there's no profit, rich people aren't happy because they can't extract any wealth. They can maintain, you know, they can get a return on their investment, you know, and there's a lot of economics, a lot of mathematics that establishes what that return should be based on risk and a whole series of other things called the capital asset pricing model. But the thing is that in a competitive market, there is no profit. And so what you have to do is you have to create shortages in order to raise the price, in order to extract a profit. Okay? And so here we have my Bloomberg article, and what's it talking about? Okay? It talks about the need to bulldoze foreclosed houses because there's so many of them on the market. For example, in Lane County alone, there are more foreclosed homes up for auction than there are homeless people. Okay? Let me say that again. More foreclosed homes up for auction. These are people who've been kicked out of their homes. Okay? Than there are homeless people.
Right, yeah.
That's a problem.
Yeah, it's really insane. And it's not just Lane County, but it's the entire United States. The one stat that I can remember is that there are 18.5 million vacant homes, 18.5 million vacant homes across the U.S. And in the U.S., there are 3.5 million homeless people.
Like, duh.
I mean, this is like, I can't do math at all very well, but that is just multiple times. There's way more. It's just, yeah.
It's mind-blowing.
Makes me speechless.
Yeah, it's mind-blowing. You must destroy housing. And that's what this article's advocating. This is Bloomberg, nice financial group. And they got this up here. It was published April 3rd, 2012 by Kathleen M. Howley. Go up to the internet. Take a look at this article. And they're arguing that we need to bulldoze houses in order to keep the prices up so their value doesn't go down.
Yeah, this is so Max Rameau. He came last week, right?
Yeah.
And I learned so much from him, and it was great to hear him talk about that housing is a human right on one hand, but on the other hand, that communities need control of their land.
Yeah.
And if we had control of our land, we wouldn't be allowing people to bulldoze these homes.
Yeah.
We'd be taking back land and giving them to people who really need them.
And maintaining them,
Yeah.
and bringing it into the future. I mean, it's the disposable economy.
Mm-hmm.
We have produced such a surplus, but we must pull it off the market, make it unavailable in order to maintain high prices, okay, so rich people can be richer. And it goes further than that. See, you and I, as working people, we live in a dollar economy. In other words, it matters how many dollars we have. But if you're the banks and you're creating dollars out of thin air, do the number of dollars that you have matter? No. It's the percentage ownership of the society. So if your bank, okay, I mean, there's a lot of banks out there, but if your bank owns 1% of the entire economy, you got a bigger, unit down here than the next guy whose bank only owns 0.7% of the entire economy.
Right, yeah, and the thing that really scares me about the foreclosure crisis is that banks now want to buy up all these foreclosed homes by the thousands. That's this article right here. Investors are looking to buy homes by the thousands.
Yeah.
There are so many homes that are in foreclosure and vacant that they want to buy them by the thousands and then rent them out to the same people that they've
now
foreclosing
kicked
on.
out of them.
And a lot of these foreclosures are fraudulent. They're illegal. And so it's the equivalent of having your car stolen by a thief and then the thief coming back to you and saying, hey, I got your car. You can drive it if you lease it from me. It's just, and we're allowing them to get away with this. And so, yeah, we can rant about how bad the banks and the government for allowing the banks and the rich, but at some point we need to just stand up and say, no, we're not going to let you do these things because nobody else is going to.
But let's talk about the government for a second. Okay, who does the government work for?
The banks and the rich.
Works for the rich. Why? Because it's the rich who can afford to finance the campaigns of the politicians.
Yeah, every year the presidential election campaigns get more and more expensive. The ads get longer, more disgusting too. And these are super PAC committees, that are used to raise funds for campaigns, but they're not tied to the candidates.
Yeah. So the candidate's own campaign talks about how wonderful this guy is, okay? And oftentimes it's the big lie, while the super PACs are attacking their opponent.
Right,
Okay,
right.
They're swift boating their opponent. They're doing that kind of stuff. And to top it off, we just had the Supreme Court, okay, who decided that corporations have unlimited free speech, and money is free speech, which means that corporations can now spend unlimited amounts of money to affect the political campaign, which now sets them up to be able to purchase the remaining parts of the government that they don't already own. Okay,
So let's see. Money is free speech. Is that right?
yeah. So how much have you got?
I'm glad that money.
You got an Occupy dollar, huh?
Money's free speech. Okay, that's great.
So let's see. I have $7 worth of free speech in here, folks. Okay, there's other people around, okay, who have hundreds of dollars, and there's other people who have thousands of dollars worth of free speech, other people who have millions of dollars of free speech, and there are still more people who have billions of dollars of free speech. Now, if $1 equals one vote, okay, are all of us working people getting our fair share of speech in the society? Or should it be $1, one vote, or should it be one person, one vote? The system that was put in by our founding fathers, okay, to correct the abuses of the powerful, okay, should we be doing that?
No, absolutely not. I mean, we should not be allowing money to buy votes, and it really does. Lost my train of thought.
I mean, I just think basically anyone out there should be outraged at the current system. I mean, there's just no way that you can sit there and go, oh, this is really good, unless, of course, you're part of the uber rich. But then again, I actually have listened to people tell me, you hate successful people. You hate, you're a hater, okay, because, these people are out there creating these scams and, sucking people in. And my objecting to that makes me something wrong with me.
Right. I mean, really, the only thing that's wrong with you is that you don't buy into corporate media telling you what you're supposed to think.
Yeah.
That's the only thing that's wrong with you. So just shut off your TV, read books, get educated, and then you'll realize how screwed up things are. Something that Max said that really blew me away, because I'd never really thought of it in that way, was that corporations, they're just a piece of paper. That's all it is.
Yeah.
And yet they can own property.
Yeah.
And they have this, pieces of paper have free speech, they can own property, and they can do all of these things that they're the same as a person.
Except they never die.
Right, they never die.
And you can never put them in jail.
And you can't burn them, apparently,
Yeah.
to make them die. But, oh well.
That's against the law. And so let's see. Who gets... Okay, let's take Enron as an example. Enron. You remember Enron?
Yeah, I saw a documentary about it.
The smartest guys in the room?
Yeah.
What an awesome piece of filmmaking. But in any event, Enron took $70 billion out of the state of California. Okay? $70 billion above and beyond what people normally would have paid for energy. $70 billion. Now, they also raised a staggering amount of money from shareholders. And they had a pension fund that they were managing that got completely looted. Okay? So we're probably talking, close to $100 billion total.
Yeah.
And all of that money disappeared. Where did it go?
That's a good question.
Where did it go?
Yeah, and the same thing is...
Did it vaporize? Okay. Did the Martians come in, load it into spaceships, and take it off the planet? Okay. The answer is it went into numbered bank accounts, okay, all over the world. And then how convenient that the Bush administration, who really didn't want to investigate this, moved all of the files into Building 7 at the World Trade Center, which mysteriously collapsed at 5:20 in the afternoon of September 11th. Just kind of came down. And of course, all the files were there. We can't investigate this. Up until that point, they had found 600 and something shell corporations that the money had been moved into, and then it would move back and forth. Now, there's probably more, okay? But we'll never know, because we're never going to investigate it, okay? And the question is, where did that money go? It went somewhere.
Wow.
Okay? So, at what level do we finally say that there's enough corruption in this society?
Yeah, I mean, I hope I'm standing up, but it's so complex and so hard for people to wrap their heads around. I think, the level is going to come when everybody's out on the streets, because they don't have a home anymore. And, going back to this, the banks are really, there could be, so right now the media is controlled by about 5 different corporations. Yeah. And there could be a time when the banks, 5 different banks that own all property in the U.S. And there's going to be massive amounts of homelessness, probably.
Oh yeah. If you don't have enough money, remember, people only have value in their ability to deliver cash on schedule. Okay? You fail to deliver your cash, be homeless. Die in the streets. Okay? Unless you can deliver, we won't give you a job.
Yeah.
Okay? There's not enough jobs to go around. Yeah. But if you don't have a job, there's something wrong with you.
Yeah.
Okay?
I'm trying to think of like, why this is, why our society is built this way, and it really comes back to corporate control over media. They're telling us that
Exactly.
this is the lifestyle that you need to live. You need to have money. You need to have the fast cars, the homes, and clothing and whatnot. So that's why I love what you're doing with this TV program and what Occupy Communications is doing. We're creating our own media, and we're putting out there what we think is valuable.
Let's you got to think about how people's ideas would changed. Okay, let's take an example, not from current, okay, but an example from my grandparents' generation. Now, my grandparents went through the Great Depression, okay, and then they went through World War II. Now, during the Great Depression, they didn't have any money, but then they got employed when we went to war. But they didn't have anything to spend it on because we were just producing war stuff. Right. So they kept saving it. And all of a sudden, in the 1950s, there's big piles of money with people who grew up during the Depression, who lived during the Depression. And you know what they weren't doing at the end of World War II? They weren't spending it. Okay? And so what Wall Street had to do was they had to go to Madison Avenue. They had to walk a few blocks to Madison Avenue to the advertising companies and saying, wait a second, there's all these people sitting on top of all this wealth that they've now accumulated and saved. And we need you folks to convince them to spend it on our stuff. And so that's when the beginning of conspicuous consumption comes into existence, where Madison Avenue is trying to convince people that they need stuff that the people are saying, we don't need this.
Yeah, and they've done a stunningly beautiful job.
Yeah, we have the 50s, and you can see it. I'm old enough to see. I just banged my microphone. Sorry about that, folks. But I'm old enough, okay, to have watched this go on for several decades, looking at the difference between life in the 50s, life in the 60s, 70s, 80s, etc., where there has been a concerted, planned, paid for, orchestrated plan to convince people to give money, to the rich people, and it has flowed from the working class. I mean, back in the late 50s, okay, the distribution was somewhere around 80-20, where 20% of the people held 80% of the wealth. Now, depending on how you count it, the 1% is controlling, either owns outright or controls. Okay, more than 95% of the wealth in this society. It's just frightening, and there's been a progression as to how they've done it.
Yeah, and it's not even just wealth that they're trying to control, but I think our dissent. A lot of the commercials on TV they seem to try to make people feel powerless and dependent on other people. You're ugly, you're fat, you're poor.
Fear and sex. Okay. If you buy our product, you will get laid. If you don't buy our product, your dick will fall off. Okay, come on, folks. That's basically what advertising's about. I took the class. I have an MBA, and I took all those classes. And you go through, and that's what it's about. And they say it in those words.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yep. So here we are. So back to foreclosures. So there's been a thing going on in Occupy talking about these campaigns where we start to get people out into the community to begin to bring these ideas. And I would hope some of the outrage, into the community. And so how are we going to get our ideas out into the community?
Right. Let's see. So basically, we just need to be out there talking to people. There's a lot of different ways. We've got a website that's pretty popular. That's one way. Another way is to create videos and use YouTube. Another way is that within our community that we've been talking about, setting up a table at Saturday Market. There may already be a table at Saturday Market, or I should say more specifically the Wayne Morris Freedom Plaza.
Right.
And just talking to people, that's really the best way, because they can see our passion and it will rub off on them, and they'll tell other people. There was a concert the other night with Michelle Shocked, and that was we had the opportunity to tell the whole audience there must have been, I don't know, 200 people there
Yeah.
about our work. We had handouts for them.
Yeah. See, what you're talking about is a mix of some pull stuff and some push stuff. Pull is where we create an event and we get people to come to it. Okay? That's one strategy. Push is where we start putting our people out into the community where other people are.
Yeah.
Because if we think about it, the population of Eugene is 156,000. And there's 350,000 people in Lane County. And, you know, Eugene Springfield is more than 2/3 of that. But let's take the 156. Now, the biggest event that Occupy had, which is a pull, we announced a parade, a rally, a march, and people came to it. We had 2,000, which is 1.3% of the population of Eugene, and a smaller percentage of the greater population in the area. But so that's that 98.7% of the people, okay, didn't go to that big event.
Right.
And so the question is, how are we going to reach that 98.7% of the people, a lot of whom agree with us? Okay, a lot of whom have been foreclosed on, a lot of whom have been bankrupted, a lot of whom have experienced denial of service from insurance companies, not just health insurance, but car insurance, and those kinds of things.
And being underwater on your home mortgage is actually, I don't know the stat, but more people are underwater than being foreclosed on or homeless.
Yeah, there's about 7,200 in Lane County, is my understanding, that are likely to be foreclosed on this year. Okay?
Wow.
In other words, the last time I saw a number, I think it was 5,975 houses were already up for auction. Okay, in Eugene alone, 5,900. Okay? And there's another 7,200 due to be foreclosed on during this coming 12 months. 365 days, folks. Okay, 7,200. Okay, that means 20 a day in this area are going to get foreclosed on.
Yeah, it's really staggering. And this is the thing that makes it even more amazing is that this isn't new. It's been going on since even before 2008.
Yep.
People think this started in 2000. It was starting before then. Yeah.
But it's been growing.
Yeah.
It's exponential. As the economy, as the cash is vacuumed out of the working class, okay? And of course it's our fault that that's happening. And it is, because we let them do this.
Right.
Okay?
Yeah.
We went off and didn't deal with the government, which can stop this, and we let the uber rich run the government and do it for their own benefit. So we hold responsibility, but now it's time to get over that and say, okay, and just start getting out to deal with this. So how do we go to talk to that? See, if it's 156,000 in Eugene minus 2,000, 154,000 people, how are we going to go and interact with that 154,000 people to get them to realize that, yeah, okay, there's a problem out there, and maybe we ought to do something about it before we're all living in the streets, before we're in cardboard boxes and in the rain and in the cold, because the uber rich own everything and they're not letting us do it because we don't have any money because we can't deliver cash on schedule.
Right. Yeah. I mean, to do that 2,000 person march took an amazing amount of energy.
Yep.
And you call that a pull, right?
Yep.
It takes a huge amount of effort to pull people.
Yep.
And a better way could be pushing, like getting out into the community and
door to door.
Yeah.
Okay, Max Ramo, door to door. Go do it.
Yeah.
Knock on doors.
Yeah.
Okay, and it's generally you want to if you've never done it before. I mean, I ran for office back in 1984.
You did.
And that summer, I ran for state rep in Massachusetts. I had been working on.
I'm from Massachusetts.
Well, you are? Yeah, that's right. I think you and I talked about that at one point.
All right, so you ran for office.
Yeah. I was. I graduated from MIT. I was living in the area, and I'd been there for a while. And then I worked on Alan Cranston's campaign.
Okay.
And he was a senator from California. This was in the 1984 election. And we didn't do very well in New Hampshire, so we were kind of done after that. But what we did, and we knew this guy couldn't get elected. He was older than Reagan. and he was bald. Okay, you can't elect old bald guys. Just don't do it. So I'm sorry, guys, I don't have any hope in the future. But we knew he couldn't get elected. But what we did successfully do was we kept the arms race on the front page of every paper in the country for 6 months. Okay, and that made it worthwhile. And I was on staff with his campaign, and I think that being in the front page made Reagan really itchy, so he kind of needed a coup in this area. And that's when he actually agreed to talk to Gorbachev, which, eventually they had their walk in the woods, and he finds out that he's actually, not, he doesn't have fangs, and he's not a bloodsucker, and that he's actually a human being and a reasonable character. And so at that point, we start talking, at which point the tension drops a little bit. In the Soviet Union, the hardliners kind of, lose a little power, at which point you can give a little bit of freedom, and poof, Soviet Union collapses. Okay? So all of that, I feel like I personally had a part in making that happen. But following all of that, I ran for office for state rep, and on that summer, I knocked on 8,000 doors. I started at the end of April, and this was for a primary race that was in September. So for May, June, July, and August, that's what I did pretty much every evening, and on Saturdays and Sundays, and I personally knocked on 8,000 doors. And, with a little bit of practice, you get pretty good at it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, because the thing, we have talked about doing that, but there's so much shame and embarrassment with these people that are facing foreclosure that we need to be really careful how we approach and not scare them away.
Yep.
And it's been difficult trying to, for me personally, just get really comfortable to approach people and do that.
Yeah. But it's not just the people who are being foreclosed on. Okay, it's the entire community that has to support those people. So there's a lot of people who are high enough in the middle class. I mean, the interesting thing is there's a continuum, and what's happened is if these are the poor people and these are the rich people, in the 1960s the poor people had some wealth. Okay, but as time has passed, the wealth has been sucked up. There's this point where people go negative to negative net worth. And it's been gradually moving upwards. And so now, again, 400 people up at this end hold more wealth than 230 million. Okay? So the people who are going negative, who have negative net worth, are moving in towards here. So if they haven't gotten you yet, they're going to get you eventually. Okay? So at some point, people have got to start realizing that we have to change this. Because if we don't change the attitude, it's not going to be 10% of us living in the streets. It's not going to be 20%. It's going to be the Great Depression again. Yeah,
they need to realize, even though they're not being affected right now, that if they don't stop, it's going to affect them later on.
Exactly.
And that's extremely difficult that takes creativity that a lot of people don't seem to have these days. And it's going to take a lot of patience on our part to work with those people and educate them.
Well, it's not just... I mean, I think let's talk door to door or something like that. I mean, we can do media campaigns. That's good. We can lobby our city council people. We can talk to existing groups, church groups, business groups, neighborhood groups, the PTA, whatever. All of these different groups. We can put speakers in front of them, and that takes some work. That takes getting on the phone, making connections, talking to people, getting on agendas for the meeting. That's all good stuff. There's petitions. We can run a contest. In other words, school kids, we can talk about, produce a small video that talks about foreclosures. Right. Produce a small video that talks about how to solve homelessness. Do those kinds, and have a contest. Okay, where the kids are starting to think about this kind of thing, and they'll bring it home with them, and we can offer a prize, and it's a good thing to do. But the real thing is going to be individual, personalized conversations.
Yes.
And my hero is Bernie Sanders. If you want to take government, and my mother lives in Vermont, and so I met Bernie Sanders literally the first year he was running. It took him 5 years to win his seat. He started for a year. He would either shake hands at a store or a mall or do something, every day, 7 days a week, for at least 4 hours. Okay, and he did that for first year, lost his election, did it for 2 more years, lost, but did much better. And at 5 years, he won his seat in the House. And
been
you
there
know,
ever since.
and Vermont has changed. Vermont is not the same state that it was when Bernie Sanders started knocking on doors. Okay, it's changed enormously. They passed a single-payer health care plan.
Right. Yep.
And they did it by knocking on doors
Yeah.
and saying health care is a human right.
Yeah, exactly. And they had a creative way of doing that. In addition to knocking on doors, I think they created media, videos. They had people wearing signs, and the sign said, healthcare is a human right.
Yep.
They've got T-shirts.
So visibilities.
Yeah,
you know,
visibility.
That's what you're talking. T-shirts, you know, is visibility. Signs, you know, those are all visibility things.
Yeah, I mean, I think being visible in the community is huge. You know, these bandanas, they're so signature, people see them.
Yeah.
I've gotten stopped several times, mostly by young people saying, hey, you're with Occupy, cool, I want to know about this and that. And with the foreclosure issue, we've talked for so long about having lawn signs, and these long, you know, typically they're the same size as elect this candidate kind of signs, but they will be focused on like housing is a human right.
Or foreclosures are a bad idea.
Yeah,
Something
exactly.
like that.
Exactly.
Just a simple visibility campaign.
Yeah.
But again, you know, a lot of it has to be talking one-on-one with people who are not going to come to an Occupy event.
Yeah.
Okay, to get them to the point where they understand the issues, they understand its importance.
Yeah.
Okay, they're activated. So we have about another minute.
Okay.
So closing thoughts, or you know, all the things you didn't get to say in the 57 minutes.
Yeah, I mean, I'm really excited. We really didn't talk about the campaign, but the campaign that we've designed is to say that long term, we want this community to understand that housing is a human right, and we also want to establish a vehicle so that we have community control over land.
Yeah. So these are what, community housing trusts?
Community land trusts.
Land trusts.
Yeah, because really it's about control over land, not just houses. We want land for community gardens or medical tents and whatnot. Yeah. And so in the meantime, within 6 months, we just want to help people be housed, stay in house or reoccupy vacant homes. You know, that's one thing I'm really excited about. And we need the community support. So we will be going out to communities and creating networks of neighborhoods that will help people stay in their homes.
Yeah. So, with that, this is Reid Kimball. I'm Joe Tyndall. We've just finished episode 35 of Occupy TV. So come back and watch us again next time. And
thanks for having me.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.
Yeah.
There's something happening here, but what it is ain't exactly clear. There's a man with a gun over there, telling me I got to beware. I think it's time we stop, children. What's